full disclaimer, I'm not a historian, I'm not a genealogist, I'm just a great-great-grandson of Nineveh Shaw, who made the mistake of saying yes to Jesse Cruz. So, Jesse, you still in here? Are you? What's your committee that does all these history walks on Friday?
Just as part of the farmers market, we have a little subcommittee that does the historical walking tour plans.
Yeah. You've done this what, 2-3 years or something?
This is our actually
Fourth year.
yeah.
Really
And
good
we
stuff.
would just add in there. This is our last one, and we would love if anybody had suggestions for another year of what you would enjoy seeing. So look me up afterwards.
Let's see, who else do I need to recognize? Oh, the mayor of Mayor John Hastings. He couldn't be here tonight, so in his stead we have Colonel Wayne B. Archer town. So
He's not going to say anything, is he?
I pulled his wire. So yeah, hopefully not. I'll hand you that way. All right. We have some honored guests with us that drove all the way from Wilmette, Illinois, and direct descendants of Nineveh. We have Phyllis Shaw, who married David Shaw, who's Wilford Shaw, for those of you who remember Wilford and Gladys, cousin Wilford and Gladys to me. And so Phyllis has joined us here, and two of her daughters, Kathy, Ingrid, and then Cindy. What should I say? Whoops. And she's from Nashville area. So they all converged here. So glad to have you with us. And then, okay, I was told to do this.
My mom told you, right?
Yeah, you have it. I said so any Shaw descendants, and Fred, you're included, stand up, if you would please. Okay. I was told I had 50 minutes, so.
Did you stand up?
What?
Did you stand up?
He was.
Hey, I was coming, yeah. Who said that, Margaret?
No.
Where's Tom? Tom said he was coming, that's a seat for him to keep running.
Well, he's not here.
All right, so let's get rolling, because I was only told to take up 50 minutes, and last time I was told that, I went over my double. Yeah, well, this was a big mistake to say this, just because the Shaw family's influence and impact on Marshall and Clark County not only runs deep, it runs wide. And there's like, in some of these papers, there's 7 pages of descendants that your husband worked diligently on. And in doing this research, I don't know how many rabbit holes I fell. So, well, we better get started, so strap on. Our focus tonight is on Nineveh Shaw. However, to do it right, I think we need to back up a couple generations and learn about his roots. His grandfather, John, was from Ireland, came into Pennsylvania, and then later came into Jefferson County, Kentucky, outside of Louisville. And in 5th grade in Mrs. Newport's social studies class, at that time, it was around the sesquicentennial of Illinois, and I was the middle child that wasn't old enough to go with Dad farming, so I went to Grandma's house, Grandma Lovett, here in town, and she was big in the Historical Society. So I went along a lot of times to their meetings, which a lot of times were meals, banquets at the Tom's Cafe, and I was all about food, so of course I went. Anyway, so I was probably a Clark County Historical Society member when I was 10. So, and then also the history plaques around the county, they're cast aluminum. There's a stone arch out here. There's one at Westfield, Marguerite Darwin, and I was the one that selected all those because they had like 20 possibilities, so they put them in a hat, and they're like, well, who's gonna draw, who's impartial? And I looked at me and like, oh, you pull out 10, so it's my fault. Alright, well, let's get started. Uh-oh, did I go the wrong way? I did. So, let me back up here. This is the Shaw family in 1900 picture. A lot of the Shaw family is kind of fuzzy, but these three guys, or let's see, these two guys are brothers, is William and his brother, and then his sister, Minerva. I'm going to have to get my cheat sheet. So they were leaving, Albert's family was leaving for Spokane, Washington. And so like, let's see, I do know, this is Wilfred, so, and a sister, Mary Cole, there you go, thank you. And there's, let's see, no, here's Momo, that was our great-grandmother. So, anyway, a lot of shows.
You missed your grandma.
Momo?
No, Bob.
Oh, Bob, Margaret, Mary.
Very nice.
She is,
That's just the little one being held.
okay,
There you go.
alright, that's Truman Booth, True Booth. Yeah. Alright. Going the wrong way. Alright, so that's, let me back up here. So, Joseph Shaw had two different wives because Eleanor Goldwyn, his first wife, died after having Nineveh and a brother William, and then he remarried Sarah Wilkins, and they had, I think, 6 or something, and Fred's ancestry comes from that lineage there. So Joseph Shaw, like I said, he served in Indian Wars. He was president, this is interesting, in fact, President Vincennes, when Tecumseh met General William Henry Harrison, and that's where Tecumseh basically called him a liar, and so things took off from there. And later, a couple years, the Battle of Tippecanoe, well, Joseph was there with his brother William. Well, in Mrs. Newport's class, I did this play about how, and I guess we might as well just jump to that. Joseph's father, John, was at this, this is called Chinleth Run Spring. This is a spring house, and they were there getting water and getting bark to help tan their hides, and they were attacked by a raid of Indians. John was killed, and William was about 12 years old. Well, he was abducted by the Indians, but Joseph escaped on horseback, thankfully, because he made it to Clark County. Joseph, William, and probably Nineveh, because he was about 14 at this time. They were present down in Vincennes when Tecumseh met up with Harrison, and I think that's when the Battle of Tippecanoe then happened. And so I heard a different story earlier, but the one that is in a lot of the history books is that William, who was abducted, was able to, several years he lived with the Indians. He didn't like the savage ways. He escaped, and they hooked back up with his brother Joseph. And they were then up at the Battle of Tippecanoe, camped out. Well, they were so close to the Indians, the next morning, one of the Indians recognized William, who had lived with them, and called him out by his Indian name. And William stood up and said something in their language, and another Indian didn't know they were, and shot him in the chest. And he died a couple months later. He didn't die right away, but he did die down in Vincennes. Okay, this is the home of Nineveh Shaw in 1820. came to, Clark County in about 1818. He lived on a farm next to Joseph, and I'm just gonna read real quick here, just some of the history. Edna Shaw, first child of Joseph, was married to Mary Latshaw, who was a daughter of Joseph Latshaw. They grew up in the north end of Shaker Prairie, which is south of Sullivan, Indiana. They came then to Walnut Prairie. Some of the things about Nineveh, well, there's Joseph. This is down in the brick cemetery on Walnut Prairie. That's Joseph's stone. It was down there. This was taken quite a while back because now it's got a black, moss or legend logo. And I sprayed it with a D2 product to try to bring it back to this state. Arlington Cemetery uses it, so I figured it's safe. Yeah, so Nineveh Shaw came to Walnut Prairie, got 180 acres on the south end of it, next to Darwin. That plat book is in 1893, and I've notated it where that acreage was. Next to his father. He was a major in the Illinois militia, and he had frequent drill musters there in Darwin. Keep the guys trained in case they needed, and sure enough, they were called out then to the Black Hawk War in the spring of 1832. They were in the mounted militia from Clark County. They rendezvoused up at Hennepin, which is up on the Illinois River up by the South Route. I think it took like 3 days to get up there. He was assigned as the adjutant to the spy battalion. There were scouts. And after coming back from that in 1832, he traveled to Louisiana because his brother, who had been there, and there's letters, those little brown papers on that table next to the stairway. There's like 6 letters that were William and William and Nineveh corresponded back and forth. And it's so crazy, you look on the outside of it, and it says Nineveh Shaw, Clark County. And that was the address. So now I got to him. And same with William Shaw. What was the name of the bend of the river? Natchez, Mississippi. That's it. And then in 1839, he started building the house west of Marshall, and that's what's right here. This house was. So this is the house west of Marshall in Hickory Hills subdivision now. And what's really cool, when I was in it as a kid, that was their summer sleeping room, all screened on 3 sides.
You had to cross Little Creek to get over.
Yeah. They owned that acreage, and then also the acreage that Oak Crest was. Dr. Mitchell bought that, and then later. All right. This is down at Walnut Prairie. It's a brick cemetery. Nineveh Shaw. He was only 48 years old, and in 48 years, he did a lot. Yeah, here's the acreage that William Shaw had. Now this is 1893, so this would be Wilford's. So here's the bill of lading that's back there on the table in a plastic sleeve. 1839, Nineveh Shaw ordered all this lumber. If you can read that scripted writing, rafters, 11.5 foot long, then this, let's see, when this bill is filled, if any more is saw, please, saw good oak in the flooring. I think, oops, that's not what I want to go to. So I had more of these. Anyway, so he was sending this to William B. Archer because William B. Archer is the one that provided all the lumber and hardware. So we cannot find this painting by Warren Shipe. Is it Shipe? Yeah. He did several paintings and of Darwin, the Darwin area. I think he did a painting, didn't he, of the courthouse, of the bandstand with the wall and the farmer sitting on a top gun. And he just did a lot of, and this hung outside, I remember it, the painting is outside the Shaw Chapel at Burnside's nursing home. And we have not, if anybody knows of it, or knows who to, I've got one more lead tonight to follow up because it's so cool. And this is just, so what the pioneers did back then, these are flatboats, and William Shaw was into this pretty good, and so was Nineveh. And what they would do, they would build these flatboats out of the walnut prairie trees. So some of these were walnut and oak and just all the wood that would be marketable once they got to New Orleans. So they'd load their corn, hogs or barrels of pork, salt pork, and float down the wabash to the Ohio, to the Mississippi, and then they would ride the stagecoach then back to back home. There's another picture of Nineveh's farm in 1840 before the addition. And here it is. I remember being in it in this state because George Kyle, Uncle George, and Dad were out there and they were deciding, okay, and so they got a hold of somebody who would tear it down and share the lumber. So some of those floor joists were like 3 inches thick and at 8, 9 inches long. And Dad built my nephew Jeff Murphy, a gun cabinet. He built, so Mom and Dad built that baby crib right there from walnut out of that house. The house was really cool. It had, like down in here, it would actually go under that, and so the root cellar was actually in the house.
Brian, how old were you?
At what point in time?
When you were there with
I was,
your dad?
I think high school.
So it's before we were
Let's go
born.
this way.
Yep, or you were.
Yeah. And, but I do remember as kids being there at a sledding party when the McConkeys lived there.
The Conkies lived there when we were.
I remember the barn there.
And Larry and I actually went through that house before children. We were married and trying to decide if we thought it feasible to move into and fix.
Well, I wish it had it.
And we didn't.
So there's a 4-year gap when they were married and I was born.
During that time, we changed our mind.
I remember the slugs right there and all kinds of
I could have lived there.
Yeah.
Okay, so on this farm, Nineveh had, and so Cousin Mary, and this is Mary Cole, when I say Cousin Mary Cole, she was a descendant of Minerva Shaw, and so her grandmother, yes, Minerva Shaw, told about a loom shed out there on that farm. People would come, they had a weaver that just traveled around through the country, and he would make coverlets. Well, that blue and white coverlet hanging on the baby crib was made in that loom house out there. And so some of them were made from the flax and wool raised right there on the end of the shawl. So flax, I guess that was linen. Is that what didn't you have to spin that into linen?
That's what they make linen out of.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then also, a shoe cobbler would come into and use that loom house, and he would build shoes with children or man, which size you want. Then, I don't know if he repaired, but some were, Mom said, some are round-toed, some are square-toed. Whatever he made for you, you wore. And here's just a picture with the house in the background. Back when it was a dairy farm, and these are some high school kids.
Brenda let them have their cattle out there, the high school, ag kids in high school.
Okay.
That's where they kept their cows, and the kids are out there.
I might be glad you showed up there. Okay, so let's break it down. So, all right, I gotta get my cheat sheets again. So they had, oh, here they are. All right. So we'll start with Albert. So they had 9 kids. I think Joseph, he was the only one that didn't live to, yeah, he died as an infant. Yeah. So let's start with the oldest, Albert. There's Albert, and that picture that we started the program with was when they were gathering, because Albert and 3 of his children went to Spokane, Washington. He just decided for some reason, I'm not sure the reason, but they went west. And so that was the gathering to send them off. He taught school near Darwin, and then also near Livingston. And then there's an article, and you know, time doesn't get into it. We don't have it. But Nineveh took Albert and one of the other brothers, and they went to Jacksonville to an academy, a school for him to have schooling. And it took him like 3 days. The rain, the mud, in the article, it was quite the journey just to get to college. I like that.
Brian,
Oh, yes.
the Albert Shaw married Virginia Drake. If you remember back a few years ago in the Advocate, there was, and Virginia Drake's related to the Huffingtons, and Dean Huffington or Dale Huffington had a diary of Albert and Virginia from Shaw, from when they went to Spokane. And all that was in the paper. It was a series in the newspaper. The diary of Virginia Drake, Virginia Albert Drake.
Yes, the Drakes were kind of royalty from England in a way. There's, I think, another Drake that entered into the family as well, a sister. Her dad's name was River. I thought that was kind of unique. And they had 8 children. And he was also in the, back up there, served in the Civil War, and he got hurt in Sherman's Atlanta campaign. Oh, another thing on the Drakes, I gotta back up on this because it's interesting. So there was a scam way back then, and it was the Sir Francis Drake royalties that if you were a Drake descendant, you would have an inheritance. And for help filing all the paperwork, you sent them money, And they even had meetings in Terre Haute, and there's a newspaper article about, and I don't know, I can't remember whether it was Virginia Drake or was it, or one of the children that, and that guy served time in Iowa, they found him. But we got, yeah, that's very fun. So this is just a picture of some of the surviving of men of his children. We have John and Albert and William. And I wasn't sure, but then I realized when I found another picture that had their names depicted, they part their hair differently. And you can tell the difference in their facial structure.
They do look
Yeah.
alike.
That's exactly right.
One's old.
And then back here, this is Minerva Stevenson. This is cousin Mary's grandma. It's Mary Cole. And then this is Mary Jane Bender.
It's what we always say when we go clean our tombstones.
And actually, let's see.
We're sitting on.
This is her dress back here on this mannequin and her shawl. And I tried to get Mary Jane to wear it here tonight.
Which one?
It's too hot.
So,
Hey, go back, Brian.
okay.
This picture over here is her house.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It's Mary Jane.
There's
Mary
too much
Jane-
stuff.
Mary Jane.
So yeah, this is the house that Mary Jane and I, we all played in. Her husband, J.C. Bryan, the first hardware store proprietor in Marshall, built that home. And he was quite the entrepreneur, and he owned the property out west of town after the Shaw family. Well, she was a Shaw, and he had the money to do it, to buy it then off the estate. So yeah, he built that home, and that's where that first picture was taken, was out there in the front yard, right outside that window. That's where I found a pre-Civil War 6-shooter that my son Daniel, sitting in the back, has. I found it up in this attic, right up there, and it was down against the eave of the roof, wrapped up in a gunny sack. And of course, this was like when I was 10 years old, bored, because I was bored. So I was snooping through every attic and everything. And I come down, so I unwrap that burlap, and I come up with this 6-shooter gun, and I go carrying it downstairs like, hey, where's this from? And they're like, they knew nothing. They knew nothing about it. I do know it's pre-Civil War. It's a first edition Colt Dragoon. I should have Daniel brought it tonight, but it had a flaw in it, in that the barrel was cracked. And then they designed later, the Colt company told me this, a more reinforced. Well, it cracked when it was first used because the blacksmith on the end of the barrel, a ring of iron, so they go ahead and use it. And you can't see it anymore because they let me play with it out in the yard and stuff. And so etched on the barrel, which had to be done by hand, was a scene of Indians chasing buffalo on horseback.
Mama would tell a story, like our great grandmother would tell a story that when her father was building that house, they lived a block to the west of there in a small house. And when he was building that house, her mother made her wear shoes to school all the time. And she would go up there to the house and leave her shoes where her dad was building the house, and then go all into school barefoot.
There was a class system back in those days. There was. I mean, there were people that, and Dr. Mitchell told me that story about cousin Mary, never married, lived 100 years in the house she was born in, and but she did have a boyfriend. Unfortunately, he wasn't, and she considered getting serious with him, and this was when, unfortunately, he was not a connected family. and her family, just like, but guess what? History changed because they were friends later when she retired in Florida, and he was a doctor. Okay, so this is Albert Shaw's stone out here at Marshall. This is Louisa. Louisa married Reverend Dean Andrews. And this is a house, and I took a picture today, and I didn't take time to get it on the PowerPoint, that John and Sarah Tarble have got it back more into its early state. This is after some additions. Reverend Dean Andrews, they had 5 children, and then Louisa died, and he remarried, and actually in that first picture, his second wife's in that picture, Doris, and they had Fanny Andrews, who was a librarian here. She was a teacher. She never married, and back there on the table are a picture of 2 plays that were done here, and my great-grandmother, we called her Mama, Margaret Hope, she's in there in one of the dresses, and so is Fanny, and you can actually turn the picture over and you'll see the names of others. There's a Shaw, I don't know if it's Gertrude or which one it is. But, so I'm going to tell this story because it's cool. The workers there right now have been working on this house, and they heard whistling upstairs. And there's nobody up there. And so there's a lady in town, and she came there, and she said, not only is there a girl whistling upstairs, a little girl, there's a man walking around the yard outside in a military outfit. Well, their eldest son was Colonel Albert, and he was Albert, and he was in the Civil War. And, you know, family sticks around. She's a ghost whisperer. Yeah. So, you know, and when I went over and asked Colonel William B. if he could come over here if he wasn't busy, and Nineveh here, which, by the way, I should explain, this is Nineveh's powder horn, and Phyllis didn't want to get served. She didn't want to serve 3 years because she didn't have a FOB card, so her musket is still with her grandson. This is the one from the museum, but they look the same, and I don't blame you. And this is the stone out there in the north end of Marshall Cemetery on the front row in that circle area where that's the oldest part of the Marshall Cemetery. And this is Reverend Dean Andrews' wife, sacred to the memory of Louisa Shaw, wife of Reverend Dean Andrews. And then they have a son there. And then this is, down here, this is, no, that's not his second wife. That's another daughter, because she married this D.C. king. Okay, now we go to Sarah. Sarah Shaw. She married Payne, and he was a physician, I think over around Martinsville. And they had Clara and Lola. And I got her name. I think Sarah had. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So those 2 daughters are in the Harlan Mausoleum out at the Marshall Cemetery. Oh. Yeah, right there. There's Clara. There's Lola. They married, let's see. Yeah, Clara, yeah, married to William Harlan. There we go. Yeah, I tell you what, that cemetery out there, the Shaw Connection, there's so many, Greeno's and, Paynes and just, when you have that many kids, and a lot of girls, they're gonna have all these other families. That's why there's cousins. Everybody's a cousin. Now let's go to Eleanor. So Eleanor married to Summers, and this is the house next to Mary Cole's house, the backside of David Lewis's house, and he was. And they had just one son, Edward. And there's Eleanor's stone out in that older part of the Marshall Cemetery. Now we go to William. So William is the one that built the house that Joe and Jim Vedas live in, just up 7th Street. But it's just a beautiful home. It always has been through the years. And there it is. And he was a student of Dean Andrews. I thought I had the year. It was in the 1840s that this house was built. And this is so cool. So, I'm not sure the year, it's in the 40s, 1840s or 50s, but they threw a poverty party. So, I'll pass that around. This is really funny, the spelling and everything. And it was a fundraiser for something. There's Williams out at Marshall Cemetery. And then this would be Wilfred, the son of William. And the reason we're jumping down a generation is because then these three folks came from this lineage. So, he also, this Fred Shaw owned the Darwin Ferry, and he built the house that's apartments across from the high school, the corner of Mulberry and 6th. So yeah, he had 7 children, and that's where the Greenos come in. One of the daughters made a Greeno, the Hall Bakers, and of course Wilfred, and then also Virginia Root, the Root that designed the Coke bottle company, and we've got pictures back there where the Shaw Chapel out of Burnside's was dedicated, and it's got the Root family and in Virginia as well. Actually, I don't think I put it in here. No, but Virginia's house over in Allendale subdivision, where they have pictures of Ann, Mary Jane's and Margaret's mother, swimming with Chapman Root as little kids, as the first in-ground swimming pool in Terre Haute. And it's quite a stately house today. My sister and I went by it last week. So Wilfred, he was, there's a whole article about him in Marshall Choice. The newspapers here in town have interviewed him like 2 or 3 times. And that's his home there. He and his wife Gladys. he was an extension advisor, and then he became an executive secretary of the American Farm Bureau. He was quite a well-educated man, went to U of I, served in the Navy, and just a gentleman, as I recall as a kid anyway.
I recall it as a kid.
Yeah.
Anymore.
He was just. Mary Jane. Mary Jane, you want to do this one?
No.
That's where the name comes from.
I'll correct you if you're wrong.
I was banking on that.
The whole time.
So, Mary Jane, she was the sixth child of Nineveh Shaw, and married J.C. Bryan, James Cullen Bryan, in 1853. He was her husband, J.C. Bryan, was both a hardware store. He was just a good businessman, a landowner, and he did one term in the state as a state representative. I have a copy of a letter he sent back to his son, who was running the hardware store, saying, "I hate this. I want to come home. I want to do my business." But one of the things I do recall that they did do was they started the free school, public school system while he was up there. Mary Jane, anything else you want to throw in?
There she is.
There she is.
Don't you think I look?
There you are.
I know. Oh, well, she looks like me too. All three of the boys died young.
Let's see, only one of them married.
Yeah,
It was
Bill married,
Clarence, William, and Albert.
William married Corey Briscoe and
Yeah.
lived in that home. And then he died. They were all sent to, he went to California. He's gonna move the whole family to California because they were dying from consumption. The boys were. And so he moved up, he sold the hardware store and moved the whole family to California. And I have letters that he wrote back to the family telling them how to do that. And then on his way back, from California, he died on the train in Texas.
Yeah.
And the family didn't move out there, and because my great-grandmother didn't move out there, she lived to be 100. Right?
Yeah, I remember her telling me that, I was supposed to go west because they didn't think I'd live to see my 20s.
Yeah.
Little do we know.
You're flipping through a bunch of
Oops,
them.
sorry. Got heavy on the finger there. Now we have Minerva. Minerva married Oliver Stevenson. He was a civil engineer, and so helped lay out roads and let's see. Minerva was 9 years old when Nineveh passed away. Like I say, he only lived to be 48, so she was one of the younger children. And so they had Eleanor, who they called Nettie, and I don't know that she ever married. She was a teacher.
She lived there all her life.
And then Lola, which is cousin Mary, we call her cousin Mary, mother, she married Walter Cole, and what they had, the Cole and Cole loan office, abstract office.
Abstract.
Yeah, abstract. Right.
She was 14 years old when her father died. And
Who now? Who did? Cousin Mary?
Cousin Mary was 14 years old
Okay.
when Walter died.
Right.
And so Larry lived there longer than any man in that house.
You may, Larry. And Larry did a lot of work to restore that house and get it back in its state.
Yeah.
And one of the English boys was telling me the railing he was redoing,
Yes.
and he said there was so much paint, but the wood underneath it was rotted, so it was the paint. He said I had a ladder against it, and he's like, That pain tells me.
They help us, they get it.
I'm sure Larry had a lot of fun. Okay. So there's Minerva's stone out in Marshall. And now we go to John. John was the 8th child of Nineveh. He was a merchant. And he was 7 years old when Nineveh died. Nineveh died after coming back on a river. He'd been on a trading trip and he got ill and he got home, but he only lived, I don't know, 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
They had, John had twin boys. One of them made it to Savannah, Georgia. I don't know any details about him. Edwin. And then Henrietta, they called her Nettie, she married Truman True Booth. And that was his second marriage. And he was a merchant as well. And Joseph then is the one that lived. Oh, John, here we go. There's John. And there's his twin boys. That's right. John went to Kansas City, and I think out there he got into the steam engine type business.
So Brian,
Yep.
I can tell you, Mary Latshaw, Nineveh's wife.
Yeah.
I have the chair that she died in. And if I'd known, I would have brought it.
She's probably sitting.
Yeah. There's a story, she was sitting in it, and she was living with Minerva, and she was sitting in that rocking chair in front of the fireplace, and not well, and Minerva noticed that she had passed. So she tipped the rocking chair back, and she got a log from the fire that was laying there to go into the fire, stuck it under the run of the rocking chair, so she wouldn't fall out, and sent one of the girls to get her brother, get a son to come help, because she passed. And that rocking chair's in my head.
And it's a
The
lot.
story about it is underneath the rocking chair, taped to the rocking chair.
Oh, is it really?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
That's cool. Did she ever talk to you?
No.
That's good.
It's comfy to rock in.
And this was, I really didn't do any research on, this is the, Sarah Wilkins when they, I get it right. So that's Nineveh's half brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the other one.
This is Sarah.
And that is
image, so.
that is where, that, family is where Fred and Braden, yeah, Braden.
Gilead Shaw, the company, regiment he was a part of, they could buy a Henry repeater to use, and then the government would supply them with ammo, because the regiment there he was a part of was either 56th or 65th Indiana Infantry. They were known as the Western Sharpshooters. Gilead during the war died of consumption, and before he died, they actually moved him away from fighting, and he served as, he did quartermaster duties. Something along that's what it said.
Quartermaster?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they moved him over to do work like that before, he died.
Okay. Braden is he's gonna be a GL.
He is.
Yeah.
I see him at school and he tells me new things every time I see him. It's so exciting.
Well, if, anybody have any other questions that Mary Jane can answer? Try and get back to the very beginning. Yeah, I have more slides than that. Almost there. Who else do you know? Picture. 1990s when that picture was taken from out here. Yeah, so like, this is Mary Jane, our grandma. This is Truman Booth. He was a widower. Edith Shaw, she died 5 years before this picture.
Mary Jane's Momo, right?
Yeah, right here.
Right there.
Right there's Margaret Brian. Yeah.
That's
And she lived in this house. Probably born in that house there.
Yeah.
And so here's her brother. This is Bert Bryan. That's her brother. And so, okay, here we go. Albert's daughter, she went to Martha Shaw Cole, and she went to Spokane. She was a widow at that time. And then we have, this is Nettie Shaw Booth. And Gertrude Shaw, she never married. This is Nellie Stevenson. She was a teacher. She never married. And that's Wade Shaw, Albert Shaw, Fred Shaw, which is cousin Wilford's father. And this is Mary Shaw, and she's holding Edith Shaw Hallbecker, which is cousin Wilford's sister. This one, this older lady, I don't have it mentioned. It's Aunt Mary Shaw, Camilla Cole's mother. I'm not sure.
You know where, the Sheepies live? That was Camilla Cole's house.
Who's Camilla Cole?
God knows, but that's cousin Mary, she's not here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, Braden, get all your grandparents, get stories, get it wrote down. Man, if we could talk to cousin Mary and our great grandparents. I tell you what, the library's oral histories that they have down there are just a plethora of information, and the local history of Clark County and Marshall, and it's just amazing. Those Damien Macy and there's several others that just put a lot of time into that. And I asked her, I said, yeah, Louis Geckler's, and I say they do. And I'm like, well, I need to read it because I think we need to do him again. Because that guy. So yeah, here's a story on that Louis Geckler was telling Brad, who's working on John and Sarah's the Andrews house, that he can remember his grandfather telling him the story that his grandfather was a little boy sitting on the knee of his grandfather, and from that porch of that house, they could see the bonfire and hear the drums of the Indians that lived out on around Big Creek, and when they had their get-togethers, their powwows, whatever, you can hear it. We need that kind of history. So, any other questions, comments, Eleanor?
Yeah, is it true that there's no picture that you know of, any of you, of Nineveh?
Well, he died before 1844, before
Well,
photography.
no painting, no.
Not that we're, if somebody has one, that'd be great.
I have someone looking for one, that's what I want.
You said you were looking, you've got some pictures, but you wouldn't have it now, no.
Don't know the schedule.
Yeah.
That's so far back.
Yeah.
Because
Well, 1844.
we have so many pictures back then, and I have pictures inside that house back then, when my grandmother was little, and the reason is because one of her uncles had the first camera in town.
Oh, yeah.
And
Let's see, was it
I even
Bert?
have a picture of, yeah.
Uncle Bert, yeah, he was, Mr. Hornbrook was a photographer at the high school, and he said when they had his auction after he passed, he bought, glass, he had a stack of glass negatives, and I had some of those, and
One of the pictures I have, they're all sitting there in the living room, and there's a string running down the floor to the camera, and he's actually in the picture, taking the picture. And you can see the string running from him.
It is the first selfie.
yeah. Allison, do you have anything you wanna add?
Yes, so the oral histories are available, and like Mary Jane was talking about the diary being in the newspapers, because we were back here chatting, we're like, do we have this diary? And we're like, we do, because we have all of our newspapers digitized, so you can go and look at that diary. So everything dating back to the Civil War is available on our website and the newspapers, and then we have 300 plus oral histories. And if any of you, Edie, she's always our scheduler for oral histories, if any of you would like to do an oral history, please let us know, because honestly, we have to concentrate on preserving history today. Because and so many of the people that we have done oral histories with, they're gone. I'd say 95% of our oral histories, these people are gone. And so at the time, you might feel a little awkward, like, oh, I don't have really anything to say. And then 2 hours later, we discover you're full of rich history. And so we encourage you to think not so much about yourself and how that might be perhaps a little uncomfortable, but really for future generations, so that people like Brian and Mary Jane can tell us about it.
I tried to get an oral history and failed from Dr. Mitchell. He came out to Mom and Dad's house after Dad had his stroke. Rose Gwyneth brought him out to have a visit. And I had a cassette recorder, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna grab this. And they talked about, he talked about Margaret Brian Hogue, who he bought the property of, and he talked about how hard she was to deal with. She was Scottish, her mother was from Scotland, and that's why the story is out in the Marshall Cemetery, the husband's buried and then the wife's buried on top of her because they didn't want to pay for another lot. Anyway, he also told a story, and here he is, 70 plus years old, and he goes, I'm going to have to confess, I've never shared this story before, but I had a little brush with a criminal side in that the Hogue house, they had the farm down there south of Darwin, and they raised watermelons. Well, they brought the watermelons up to the back porch and stacked a huge stack of them. Well, he was in high school, and he had these older boys that were cruising town back there in a car, and they said, hey, let's steal a watermelon from the Hogue house. And he was the youngest, and they kicked him out of the car and said, go get watermelons on the back porch, and we'll meet you, we'll circle the block. Well, just west of the house, before the Volkers built that ranch, that was an orchard. And so he's got 2 watermelons. He's running across that orchard because the car's coming, and he sees the car coming around. And there was a duck pond or something, and he, beknownst to him, and he steps off and goes face first. Busts one of the watermelons. The other one didn't bust, he said. Grabbed it up, ran there, the car's slowing down. He said, I didn't even wait for it to stop. I just threw the watermelon in the back seat, and I dove to the window. There wasn't any post there, so it was a big opening. He says, I dove in there, and I never did anything with crime again. So, I hope Dr. Mitchell forgives me.
And we do have some Dr. Mitchell interviews and some talk about Dr. Mitchell too.
I know, doubt if that's in it.
No, that's not in there.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming.